Let's discuss now with Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida. He is on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Obviously, some very dramatic news coming out of Israel. What's your reaction to this? What can you tell us?
No, thanks, Jim. Obviously, it's great news for the family. It's great news for the state of Israel. Obviously, Israel is continuing to show that if they have actionable intelligence, they will go and get their hostages. But obviously, it reminds us how many families are still waiting for Sinwar to release the remaining of the hostages. And so, you know, it's great that Israel has the capability to do that if they have actionable intelligence to go and get hostages. But we have to eventually get to a deal and get Sinwar, put the pressure on Sinwar to release the remainder of the hostages.
And Congressman, I mean, to that point, is enough being done, you know, on all sides? What are your thoughts on where that process stands right now?
Well, Jim, I mean, look, it doesn't appear to me that we've made dramatic progress. It doesn't mean that there aren't negotiations going on and that we're not getting closer, right? But we just don't know how close. It's not clear to anybody whether Sinwar is interested in a deal at all. And it doesn't appear to me that pressure has worked, whether it's international pressure or local pressure. In fact, it just appears to me all the pressure continues to be on Israel. Sinwar is a single individual who's now the both political and military head of Hamas, who can end this war, end the suffering of the Palestinian people, get to a ceasefire, and return the hostages. It's all up to him. This idea that it's up to Israel is just not accurate. Israel can't agree to allow Hamas to remain as the government power. And if that is what Sinwar wants, where he remains in charge, then I don't know that we're ever going to get to a deal, which is why Israel is continuing, when they have actionable intelligence, to go and rescue the hostages, which show Israel is focused on getting the hostages back. But we also can't give in to Sinwar. And so we need international pressure on the Hamas leader to end this war, end the suffering of the Palestinian people, and release the hostages.
And I do want to switch gears because I know you're a part of the task force investigating last month's attempted assassination of former President Trump. Yesterday, you and some of the other lawmakers, I believe, were in Butler, Pennsylvania, touring the site of the shooting. Can you tell us about that visit? What stood out to you? What can you tell us?
Well, everyone has read, obviously, that this building where the shooter was on the roof was close to the stage. But I got to be honest, until you go there, Jim, you don't actually realize how close it was, which makes it more outrageous, quite frankly, that he was able to get on that roof, that roof was not within the perimeter. And so for me, that was the most stark issue that I saw. And it leads me to believe that there were a multitude of failures that day, not one specific failure. I mean, we were inches, obviously, from an American catastrophe. So the task force on a bipartisan basis is obviously going to examine all of the failures and figure out what corrective actions need to be taken so that something like that never happens again.
And forgive me for asking something that maybe you can't answer, but were you given access to the roof? Were lawmakers able to get on top of the roof? Did you just get a look at it from down on the ground? Can you tell us about that? Because that seems to be, you know, really at the heart of this. You know, folks are just thinking that this is inexcusable, that this area was left unguarded.
Yeah, so we were able to get on the roof. So I went on the roof myself. We were also able to go inside the building where agents were inside that building. We were also able to walk from where the perimeter ended to this building to see how close it was. There were some interesting things that we learned. One was the parking lot that is next to this building was closed off to cars, but it wasn't closed off to people. So people just walked in, right, and were able to get up to this fence line where the perimeter was. I mean, you're talking that it's a clear shot to the stage, both from the perimeter and from the elevated position of that stage. I mean, it's just an outrageous failure by the Secret Service to have allowed this to not be in the perimeter or to not have it better guarded to keep people from the public. While we don't have direct evidence of it yet, Jim, I mean, it just appears to me there's no doubt that the shooter had known this facility, had cased it maybe a day before, because he entered the roof on the farthest side of the building and then walked to the closest side of the structure closest to the stage. He had to know these buildings had the roof connecting. And the only way you can see that is from being on top. And so while we've not been provided evidence that he's done that, he had to have known that. He jumped on a air handler, and that's how he got onto the building.
And as you know, former President Trump is resuming these outdoor rallies. You know, obviously, there are some who say that this is maybe not a safe thing to do, given what took place last month. What are your thoughts on that? Should presidential campaigns have these outdoor rallies, or is that just too dangerous?
That's an interesting question. Many of the task force members on a bipartisan basis were discussing what is the role between campaign, Democrat or Republican, and Secret Service. Does Secret Service get to veto a specific site if they deem it too dangerous?
Yeah.
And we don't believe that they have that authority, and that's something that we could discuss for the future. And so, yes, you know, we're looking at whether or not this site should have been picked at all. It's kind of a learning lesson for the future. But Secret Service says they've taken corrective actions, but we want to see those corrective actions. So one of the things task members were talking about is accompanying the campaigns on the road to see these corrective actions in place. Trust but verify. And so there are a multitude of investigations going on: an inspector general, a special panel, Homeland Security, FBI, Secret Service, the task force in Congress, and committees in the Senate. And so we got to get to an answer, and we got to tell the public information as soon as possible to stop these theories that are both, you know, on different sides of the spectrum, that one, it was an inside job, or the other, that the whole thing was staged. And that's because the agencies are not sharing information in real time.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because there's just been a lot of rhetoric flying around about, you know, who the shooter was and what his motivations might have been. Have you gotten anywhere in terms of that?
No, we've not been provided that information, and I get why people are using their imagination, because it's so unimaginable that someone could get on a roof, have a clear line of shot to a former president so close to the stage. And sometimes, Jim, when we test these areas of government, like in my high school, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, in the shooting, we saw a multitude of failures that day that led to that horrific event at my high school. There wasn't one thing that went wrong. It was dozens of things that went wrong. Right. I think the same thing is the case here. Dozens of things were wrong that day, but until something gets tested, you don't know how it's gonna fail. And so this failure is so unimaginable that people are saying, well, that's not possible without, you know, maybe it was this or maybe it was that. But that's why it's incumbent upon these agencies to share this information so that the vacuum doesn't get filled with misinformation.
All right, Congressman Moskowitz, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it, and keep us posted on any developments from that very important investigation. Thanks so much.